Thank you. I should be able to see my screen and hear me okay now. I'm Mike Faulks. I'm the co-founder and director at Aquasensor, and I'm going to talk to you today about environmental pollution monitoring, or more specifically, why it's important, why it's necessary, and why it's so difficult to keep it secure. River pollution is a crisis we cannot ignore, with 86% of rivers failing ecological tests. Causes include industrial waste, agriculture, and road runoff, as well as sewage pollution, which is the one that grabs the headlines. The stats are awful. 450,000 events, comprising 3.61 million hours of sewage spills in 2024, 11 million pigs, and 1.1 billion chickens, producing 10.4 million cubic meters of manure with high levels of nitrates and phosphates, and much of which then drains into our rivers. From the BBC to national press,
Sorry,
government
Mike, just
agencies
very
to
quickly, could you turn your video on and then I can spotlight you?
I'm sorry. Uh,
I know it was on earlier. There you go.
yeah, sorry about that. So from BBC to the national press, government agencies to public bodies, the images are shocking. We've all seen them. We're all outraged, but taking action to stop the pollution is very difficult. Alongside the known and sometimes visible pollutants, such as the road runoff from salt and tyres, phosphates and nitrates from farms and sewage, and wastewater from water and sewage treatment, there are new and often unseen dangers. Examples include dioxins, which are a group of persistent, toxic, man-made chemical compounds that are the byproducts of industrial processes, and also microplastics, which are found everywhere in the environment, including oceans, rivers, soil, and air, and have been detected now in food and drinking water, and even human tissue. Emerging research shows potential links to increased risk of stroke and heart attack. As an aside, this type of pollution is what got me involved in Aquacentre in the first place. I live in Derbyshire, which has some stunningly beautiful countryside. But in the mid-1900s, it hosted a number of industrial plants, including the Colite Company, which manufactured smokeless fuel. They were well known in the area for pumping waste into the local river system and absorbing the resultant fines as a cost of doing business. Over the years, studies have found frightening statistics. The dioxin levels were recorded at 3 parts per million above the factory in the river, just within acceptable levels. But they reached 10,000 parts per million below the factory, causing damage to livestock, milk, and crop production. And when major innovation of the area was in progress, the rivers ran orange, and the cause was a byproduct of their production of chemicals used in Agent Orange, powerful chemical herbicide and defoliant used by the US military in Vietnam. The current methods of water pollution monitoring involve a mix of advanced technologies, extensive data collection, and ongoing challenges related to data provenance, reporting accuracy, and timeliness. There are many comprehensive monitoring programs, some with real-time or near real-time data systems, but there's a lack of consistency, completeness, and accessibility in this data collection. Water pollution monitoring faces several core problems: incomplete coverage and differences in technology or standards hinder integrated assessment and understanding. Data provenance, traceability, and reliability is challenged by irregular sampling, technological limitations, and database harmonization issues. Accessibility varies depending on who you are and where you are. The ecosystem of monitoring, data reporting, and repositories is increasingly interconnected, but regulatory, technological, and methodological differences limit the requirement of universal interoperability. It's difficult to compare readings when the measurement or units are different and where the timestamps differ. Focusing on sewage and runoff, I took a snapshot of what was happening at lunchtime on Tuesday of this last week. 412 sites were actively discharging sewage, and 3,300 had discharged in the previous 2 days. And if we zoom in on the SWCSC area, 2 discharges were occurring at that point in time, one of which had been pumping out sewage for nearly 2 hours. But even this is misleading, as the particular overflow in question stopped and then restarted again, which is then logged as a new spill of shorter duration. Sewage discharge is one thing, but it has real-life implications. Sandy Bay is an award-winning beach, but water quality has deteriorated over the last few years and is now only judged as satisfactory from a previous good rating. But again, data is key, and the most recent reading was 49 days ago, which is not an awful lot of use if you want to go swimming. The data collection problem is compounded by the wide variety of different sensor types that are available. This includes pH for acidity and alkalinity, conductivity for salts, minerals, and dissolved solids, turbidity to measure solids, nutrients to measure ammonia, nitrates, and phosphates, and fluorescence to monitor algae, oxygen demand to measure organic pollution. Most water companies use multiple sensors combined into single units. But as would be expected, this can be very expensive, extending to thousands of pounds per sensor unit. The current requirement, referred to as Section 82, requires water companies to monitor upstream and downstream in real time at over 14,000 storm overflows and 9,000 sewage disposal works in England. Adding to this measurements by river stewardship companies, the Environmental Agency, citizen science, and many others, it's a very complex problem. And this is only monitoring known sites. There are 200,000 kilometres of rivers in the UK, and if we don't monitor them, then we don't know what is happening. Like so many things in this industry, there's still a debate about how this is going to be accomplished, and with the pressure groups pulling in different directions. Aquasensor's approach is to focus on overall river health, which can be measured by reading temperature and dissolved oxygen. We combine affordable real-time sensors with a SaaS platform that uses AI to deliver insights and alerts. This gives an immediate picture of water quality in the river. We put a sensor probe in the river connected to low-power electronics, which sends the readings via the 5G network to the cloud. Power is provided by battery connected to a solar panel. Just to emphasize, this isn't a sell pitch, by the way. We sell to water companies, but I wanted to kind of talk about what we do so that I can kind of give the context of why we need to look at the security. For what is essentially a simple requirement, the connectivity is quite complex. As we want to be able to detect pollution events when they happen, we need real-time data, which means 5G connection. Satellite would also be a possibility, but that does need line of sight to the sky, and most rivers are surrounded by trees, which causes a problem. The data is sent to the cloud where it is stored and analyzed. The user can then access a dashboard to review the results. And those of you from a cyber background will immediately see that there are numerous attack points which need to be secured. An example of use shows the sensor location on a river in Derbyshire. So the surrounding area has a field above and a small works area used to clean lorries adjacent to the road. There's a small culvert providing drainage from the works area, which flows through the field and down to the river. The diagrams show fluctuations in dissolved oxygen levels that allows notification of anomaly events, identification of the source of the pollution, and investigation of the cause. Real-time, secure data combined with data provenance allows action to be taken against the polluters. Just to make it more of a challenge, the deployment is difficult to say the least. There's no external power and limited battery. Trees block solar power and communications. It's a hostile environment with water everywhere. Sensors are in exposed locations and accessible by intruders. And remember, we need 24-hour operation and real-time data. Fortunately, we do have some guidelines for implementation for IoT, particularly the UK Secured by Design and the ETSI 303645 cybersecurity for the Internet of Things. This covers the standard requirements which you'll all be familiar with, such as encryption, credentials, resilience, validation, and so on. I won't dwell on this now, but I am happy to discuss this or any of the implementation later in the question section. However, in this environment, with the constraints that I've mentioned, there are compromises which are required. Limited power and communication gives risks to updates and patching, and there are potential problems with physical tampering. This shifts the emphasis to good encryption and authentication, and this is helped to an extent by using the built-in encryption with the LTE network for communications. Once we have solved these issues, we come to confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and the risks of data falsification. In this environment, with the sorry, I've lost my place on this one. Hold on 1 second. Later in 2024, the Supreme Court heard an appeal by the Manchester Ship Canal, who were suing United Utilities for polluting the canal. It took 3 years to get to the Supreme Court because there was a feeling that that the discharge of untreated sewage in the canal was legal. Their judgment stated that pollution was illegal under common law in terms of nuisance and trespass, and this applied to anyone whose waterway was polluted from any source. So it was a global decision by the Supreme Court that anybody whose water was polluted would be able to take legal action. That obviously leads to security and provenance of data becoming essential. And this is now starting to come through the courts. The recent case active at the moment regarding the River Wye being a good example. This major lawsuit with 4,000 people as claimants blames Welsh Water and Avara Foods, a major chicken producer, for allowing the river to become polluted by farm runoff and sewage. There are estimated to be 23 million birds being produced at any one time. This was once an area of outstanding natural beauty, and it's now slowly dying from pollution. In this case, the evidence chain is critical. So the security of that evidence chain is increasingly important. Moving forward, the Independent Water Commission's report, which has been accepted by the UK government, calls for increased resources and a move to comprehensive real-time monitoring across the water environment to track pollution and inform regulatory action. There are moves to scrap both Ofwat and the Environment Agency, but this will only increase the regulation of this industry. And like all of these reports, it's long and complicated, in this case, 484 pages with 88 recommendations, so plenty to think about. As I was preparing this talk on Wednesday, I received a notification regarding the 2025 Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill. One of its provisions is that this will designate water companies as operators of essential services, with an impact, obviously, on critical infrastructure. And for the first time, this will include water treatment companies alongside drinking water supply companies. In addition, the supply chain to these companies are also included. So this will include both sensor and monitoring data providers. This is a surprisingly fast-moving industry, and there are many more changes to come. Thank you for your time. Does anybody have any questions?